We're going to give you a brutally honest critique of the most popular squat program in the entire world, and we're going to start right now. So we're going to analyze one of the toughest squat programs that you could ever imagine, and I've even used this with two throwers who have gone to the Olympics. When I was at the Olympics in Tokyo, two of them actually went through this specific program to help improve their squats. One of the big factors that you'll get out of this is that we're going to be able to understand who could use this, what specific sports could be trained with inside of this actual program, when they would use it, and how often they would end up using this. So if you're an athlete or if you're a coach, there's a lot of different takeaways here. And when we look at the roots of this program, okay, I want to share a quick story for myself. I was being recruited out of high school to go throw at the Division I level. Okay, so I was going on all these visits, and I'm old enough that it was actually 9/11 had just happened, and I was going to take an official visit at Kent State. Okay, so in Ohio. And when I was out there, I was talking to their throws coach. His name's Nathan Fanger, just for everybody out there, great guy, probably one of the best coaches in the NCAA. And Coach Fanger was at the time transitioning to throwing javelin more, and I was talking to him about how my squat wasn't good. And when I had gone out there, I had been using a specific squat method, and I think it's really cool when you're looking at types of squat methods. Okay, there could be like a squat every day. There could be a squat 5-3-1 method, right? There could be a 10x10 squat program. There could be there's even like a front squat program that I did that was you do sets of 8 every single day until you fail. There's another one where you work up to a max double every day for 2 years. That's what I did with my front squats as well. So there's a lot of different methods on specific lifts that you can use. And where this goes with my relationship out to Kent State, and I did not commit to Kent State, but I was explaining to the coach at the time, I really struggle with squats. I think it's partially because my legs are really long. I'm just looking for an excuse because I tend to be a baby when I'm under the bar, and I don't like back squatting. And he goes, look, one thing you could do is you could try this program. So the basic setup of the super squat program that we're going to look at, every Friday you're going to go into the gym and you're going to do one set of 20. Okay, so you're going to put on the first week. So week 1, you put a 10 rep max on the bar, and maybe you sit there for week 1, and I would recommend saying like, hey, how about this is like a 12 to 14 rep max, and you look at it and you try to get 20 reps. Okay, and so even in between each rep, okay, once you get to around 8 to 10 reps, it's recommended, this is a program from Randall Strawson, that you even do 1 to 3 breaths, especially once you hit that 10 rep part of the 20 rep squat. Okay, so let's say you back squat 200 kilos or 440 pounds or even just 405 pounds. I would recommend starting around 65 to 70% for week 1. Okay, so what's that going to put you at? Around, you would be, if you're a 405 pound back squatter, it'd put you around like 275. And you're going to hit, let's say 10 reps. And after every single rep, you have 1 breath. And then at 10 reps, now you take 2 to 3 and you work up until you get 20 all in one shot. Okay, and then what I do then is that you can slowly build and add weight every single week. I recommend doing this on Friday because you'll be absolutely thrashed and you have this set out. So over a 6 to 8 to 10 week time frame, Strawson, I believe, is a 6-week program. Strawson would say, okay, add weight every single week, and then you have this big time goal so that every single Friday you're doing 1 set of 20, and then by the week 6, week 7, week 8, you're really, really pushing that 20 rep max. And basically you're going to end up seeing, based off of Strawson, and I would recommend, or I would even say anecdotally, you'll see the 20 rep max goes to the freaking moon. So that's the way the program is set up. So let's get into the experience of super squats. It's really good for that meathead athlete who maybe has gotten to a point where they've hit this plateau, and you're, let's say that you're like 25 weeks out from like the season starting, and you really, really want to push things quite a bit, and you want to see some type of growth from a mass perspective. You want to see a ton of mental growth and mental fortitude get to a new level. This is that program. Okay, this is that method. I look at training as we set up our sport depth. So if you've seen our videos in the past, we talk about sport depths, and that's how we lump sports into different categories. And then we're looking at the level of the athlete. Okay, so we do assessments, and we can look at the level of the athlete. Are they a level 1, 2, 3, or 4? That's going to impact their periodization based off of their assessments, and the assessments are based off of their sport. Okay, so then you can start to see, okay, do they need this method at level 2? Do they need this method at level 4? And you can start to play around with methods being used at different points in an athlete's career based off of what you're trying to get out of it. Okay, so then you get into things like the yearly calendar, and now you can know based off the yearly calendar, I know when these types of methods would be used. And that's where we're talking about, being 6 months out from a competitive season. A method like this is going to be reasonable to apply because it really can thrash the individual. It can be very, very challenging. And then you start to think about like the exercise selection system, the exercise system that we use, and you know that you're going to be using something that carries over very, very well. We know that if your squat improves, your clean will improve, your snatch is going to get better, probably your front squat will get better to a point, your vertical jump will likely get better within 6 to 8 weeks of improving your back squat. Your broad jump is likely going to improve. Your 10 is going to improve in the sprints. You will see an improvement in your resisted sprints through 15 yards. You will literally see these things, all of them rise. So it's an important thing to think about that in the back of your mind when you're training these different athletes. And then in our system, we even use what's known as a reactive athlete analysis, where we're looking at athlete types. So we have 3 types. We have a Zen athlete, we have a social athlete, we have the energetic athlete or meathead. And the type of athlete also benefits from this type of training, okay, for different reasons. And so you can start to take all of these tools and then you break everything down and you're going, okay, here's a good example. Dane, who was at the time 4 to 6 months out from actually competing in track, needs to get a bigger squat. He tends to be a bitch when he's under the bar on a back squat, right? He's got plenty of time out from the season. He needs to gain a little bit of weight, okay? And in turn, when all of these things happen, we know that these other lifts that have a very high correlation to his sport will also increase. Clean, front squat, back squat, or clean, front squat, broad jump, things like that. So now you start to play around with this, and it takes you into, okay, let's apply a method. And in the past, we've talked about a method that we've used with some of our taller football guys. Actually, Cameron Stewart, who plays at Temple now, he was at Rutgers, now he's at Temple. J.R. Strauss, who is a linebacker at Villanova. We used a 10-week programming method with them where we made them squat every single day. Every single day they had to come in, they had to squat to a double. Some days it would be speed, some days double bounce, some days it would just be traditional double. Every single day. So that was a method that we used right after the season ended. We wanted to push them to get their back squat to go up. And in turn, JR ended up cleaning 340 in high school. Cameron ended up power cleaning 305 in high school. So these are methods that we use based off of that. That's how our system is built. That's how Peak Strength, which is our strength training app, is built. Our strength training app is built upon these different principles that we think through all these if this then that scenarios. It's the first link down below in the description. If you're a football player or anybody like that and you want to get into our training system, head over to peakstrength.app, the Google Play Store or the Apple iOS store. Now, what ends up happening, going back to the story around Kent State and what Coach Fanger told me to do. Okay, so I build in, and what Super Squats is, and now I'm finally introducing this actual program, is that we go through this system, right? And we go through this, and the way he had informed me to set this up was like, look, train your normal week. Let's say you lift 3 days a week so you can do a leg day. Don't squat on the first leg day. Just maybe you do some front squats, but don't back squat. You do your upper body day. Maybe you do another upper body day. And then on the 4th day, okay, so then on that 4th day, which would be Friday, we go in, you do some power snatches to warm up, and then you do the back squat. Now, that is not the super squat system. The super squat system is much more simple, rudimentary, like rows, seated presses or standing strict press, single leg RDLs or single leg deadlifts, like 1 to 3 sets of each. Then you slaughter on the back squat. And then after that, you're going to do some accessory machine work. So leg extension, leg curls. That's essentially how it's laid out. But the big factor here is that we want to start off taking the first week and saying, okay, what can I do for a set of 10? I would say anywhere around 75% of your best back squat would be that weight. And that was the thing with Coach Fanger. He said, look, take you back squat right now about 405, right? Yeah. Okay. Take like 275. That's a little below that 75% barrier. Take that 275, okay, and hit it for a set of 10. And then as you stand there, breathe 2, 3, 4 times, and then attack another set of 10. Don't put the bar back. And where this goes is that it makes it very, very interesting, because back squat is one of those lifts that you're able to actually recover inside of the lift. And I remember a good friend of mine, a training partner growing up in the original garage, Tim Hahn, he would say to me, why don't we train bench press the way we train back squat? We never really fail on back squats. We would only ever fail maybe once a month, once every 2 months, whereas on bench press, you're failing basically every day. And it shows that, his argument was always that it shows that we fail too much on bench press. My argument would be bench press is much easier to fail on. Okay, I think there's some nuances that you could bring up. I definitely think you could fail less, and you would probably see some really good substantial gains on the bench press. But we would have these arguments, when we're 16, 17, 18 years old. So we're in high school. We end up doing this program, and we start at that 275. Okay, for me personally. And one of the things that I brought up with Fanger was that he would talk about the breathing. Okay, so he would say, okay, hit those 3 to 4 breaths, get some more reps, hit another 3 to 5 breaths, hit some more reps. And then as you get closer, maybe you hit, 10 breaths, and then you go finish that remaining squat set. And the interesting part with that is this system, from my understanding, was entirely created by Randall Strawson, who ran Iron Mind and still runs Iron Mind, from my understanding. Okay, so my high school coach, we've still got all the Iron Mind stuff. And if you're not familiar with this is like a weightlifting strongman Highland Games, big power sport, big power athlete based resource at the time, still around. They still have a lot of grip stuff as well, that really, really pushed towards big time athletes, power based athletes. So when you're looking at applying this, you can think through football players, shot putters, strongmen, power lifters. I would argue you could use this even with athletes like jumpers further out and not as much range of motion if they have some type of lagging issue. Okay, so when I look at this personally, okay, now over the weeks, what ends up happening is that you start to feel each and every week. So you do that first week and you're like, holy crap, this is absolutely horrific. And we did a 4-week block with Sam Mattis and Alex Rose. This is back in like 2019. These are two of the Olympians that we had in Tokyo. And they did it for 4 weeks. And the problem that ended up happening with those guys is that they got so high with the weight, up close to 500 pounds, that it would just destroy them for the next 4 days. They would barely even be able to throw. So in that regard, they were already pretty elite, pretty advanced athletes. They didn't really have to push their squats that much. But what ends up happening with a high school athlete, or maybe even an individual, let's say you're getting into strongman and you have to do squats for reps and things like that, what ends up happening is that you start to notice, one, if my aerobic capacity is a little bit better, it's actually going to help me recover anaerobically. Two, the more you play mind games, the stronger you're going to get. Okay, like literally playing head games with yourself and saying specific tactics along the way. 3, the breathing can help you control and get in the zone. And 4, I talked about the mind games, but the 4th big aspect is like you start to feel very quickly this outer body, as weird as this sounds, outer body experience that you've never felt before. And you in my opinion, you learn to really embrace that. And you're embracing it. If you're doing this in high school, you're embracing this at an age that I think can be very, very, very beneficial, as in like literally could jumpstart an entirely new mindset of embracing suffering and just taking that on and being like, I can go to the next level. I can do things I never believed I could do. I can handle stress. I can handle anything that comes my way. And so what ends up occurring here, back to the Kent State story, is that by the time I was at the 4th week, we were hitting 315 for 20. When you start to do things with 3 plates on each side for more than 10 reps, you immediately start to feel like a freak. And when you're following through with this, one of the big aspects with what Coach Fanger had said to me at the time was, hey, make sure that you're drinking that gallon of milk. Make sure that you're hitting the breath work, okay? Like you're breathing. And I think Strawson, if I remember correctly, might even talk about like the old school stuff about like expanding the rib cage and stuff like that. And I think that all that stuff matters, but I think the breath work is what helps sort of just zero in on that mind, and like it helps you sort of get out of your head and look at yourself. Okay, and you're watching yourself do these squats, and you're watching yourself push through this and be like, wow, this is crazy. So what ends up happening is over this 10-week time frame, I build up to 405 and I got 19 the last week. And the biggest thing here, these methods aren't things that you should be doing like year round. They're more so things that you can plug in and go and move around. And it makes it really, really fun. And especially at that young age, you start to make that big time growth. And so one of the big things, and I wanted to bring this up, is that by the time I would work through this, and this is what I actually do recommend even to this day when we're running this here at Garage Strength, is that when you're taking a super squat system, okay, this set of 20, you have to realize that the first week to 3 weeks, you're going to be questioning, like, is this really worth it? It's stupid. Okay. Like you the first 3 weeks, you're like, I don't know why I'm doing this. And you're going to bang out, let's say, a set of 12. And then when you get to that set of 12, typically how I say it is like, get 12 done, essentially unbroken as quickly as you can. And then when you get the 12 done as quickly as you can break that into like a set of 4 or a set of 4, 2 sets of 4. You could do a set of 4, a set of 2, a set of 2. And that's where the breath starts to come into play. And I have taken this super squat system, and then I look at it and I say, okay, if I could take these breaths at these points, that's going to enable me to get the next set. And the next set, you're still under tension. Okay. And I wanted to reiterate is that this 10-week test, I ended up gaining like 12 pounds, something like that by the end of this. We were done by the time, it was around January when we finished up. So we were getting into the indoor track season in high school. I ended up gaining like 12 pounds. I throw 60 feet in indoors, which was a big throw at the time, a big PR. I get second at states, and it was like my squat. What ended up happening is that my squat, I power clean 300 for a triple. I ended up snatching in sneakers like 110 kilos, and we would only snatch once a week at the time. My squat, because we did so much volume, we backed off for like 8 weeks, and I didn't lose anything. And we were hitting, this 405 prior to this was like a hard set of 5. And now I'm just cranking through this. And most of this was done through mental gain, like genuinely through mental gains. And I actually want to share going back to, I revisited something similar to this method during COVID. During COVID, for the first 10 weeks, we didn't really know what was going to happen. We had no idea. So it was, hey, I'm going to go to the gym. I'm going to train by myself. I don't know if the world's going to end. I'm going to squat every single day and see if I can back squat 250. And I think I worked up to like 245, right? So those methods, these styles of methods come into play really, really well. So the super squat aspect is that the first 3 weeks, you're going to end up questioning, like, do I really want to do this? The next 3 weeks, you're going to start to look forward to it. You're going to be like, you know what? Last week when I did that 300 pounds, that was pretty fun. Like, by the time I got to like 15, 16, I knew I could just bang out another 4 more and just deal with it. Okay, once you know what? I think I could do 330. I think I could hit this 330 for a set of 20. And you start to also see, all right, well, maybe I'll just do 2 or 3 warm-ups on snatches, power snatches. and then I'll go over it and I'll really start to do warm-ups. And one thing I would recommend is you just do sets of 2 to 5 on the warm-ups. So you hit like a barbell set of 5, you hit a 135 set of 5, you hit a 225 double, you hit a 315 double, and then you're going in and you got, all right, you rest for 5 minutes, you're in the zone, you're taking that out, and literally it's just like the first 10 reps. Once you start to get comfortable with this stress, with this tension, the first 10 reps, you're just like, you're hammering, and you're still present, and you're aggressively getting rid of everything that you have, every piece of trauma that you can make up in your brain. You're exiting, you're spewing out of here. And then as you hit, let's say rep 11 to 15, you break that into 5s. And by the time you start to master this, okay, I would have these mind games, and this is also something that later I also learned from John Calness, because we ended up doing this in college with Calness. So I've run this multiple times. We end up running through this, and by the time you get close to the end of a super squat system, so let's say it's a 10-week system that you're running, you start to break it. By the last 3 weeks, you're doing 5, 5, 5, 5. Okay, so it's like, how fast can I get the first 5 done? How strong can I get the next 5 done? And then I'm going to suffer through the last 2 sets of 5. And then by the time you get really close, you might do a triple and then a double. Okay, so it's like the biggest gains obviously are physical, and the breathing and learning how to control and not hyperventilate when you're under a large amount of stress. And it's the physical gains that you end up getting from the squat. And the more your squat goes up, the more everything else goes up. We know this, especially in power sports. We know that this is going to happen. Then the next aspect is that the athlete typing that we have talked about earlier, where we have those 3 different types. The type 1, the Zen athlete, dude, they'll just smash this every single week. They don't even think about it. They'll smash it till they're just collapsed. Ryan McDonald has done this for 4-week blocks and push insane weights and just dies. Doesn't matter. He just goes and does it. The people who it really benefits are the type 2s. Okay, so you get a social kid who's pretty soft. They're constantly telling you how hard their life is. They're constantly coming up with, they're the person that, if they're not good at something, they don't really want to do it. So they want to come up with as many ways as possible to get out of doing this. When they back squat, they might quit early. When they bench, they're the kid that benches and they get to here and then they just stop because they just want to stop because they don't want to push through that discomfort. So what ends up happening is, hey, we're going to do this every Friday for 10 weeks. And if you don't show up on Friday, we're going to do it on Tuesday. If you don't show up on Tuesday, we're going to do it on Wednesday. And then you just built it into the week. And those kids flip the switch by the time they're at week 8, week 9, week 10. And the thing is if you can track it and say, okay, we're going to start at this 70 to 75% for a set of 10. That's what we're going to do for 20. Now the next couple of weeks, you start to say, hey, the first week you only did 225 or you only did 205. Now we're at 250. Now we're at 260. Now we're at 270. And they start to see and they start to believe and they start to get out of their way when they're doing the squats. They start to get out of their own way. So if you have someone who is a type 2 style athlete, they could benefit not just physically, but also tremendously from it mentally. Okay, like absolutely tremendously. And the type 3 athlete, someone like myself who just wanted to be aggressive all the time, learns how to control their rage. They learn how to control their anger and discomfort a little bit more so. And type 3s are also known to quit because once they get to the point of where they can't use aggression anymore, now they have to tap into more of the logic and more of the sensibility of like, I still have the strength to do this. So they make some big time gains. So now I want to go into, I wouldn't run more than 10 weeks, probably a year, honestly. Maybe you could run it twice a year, but I think that tends to be a bit much. I think there's some other methods that you could run outside of the super squat system. I think that the super squat system should be used at certain points. And we mentioned the levels in our system. So we have assessments, and if we have like a shot putter who we're going to test their back squat, their clean, their vert, their front squat, their bench press, right? Those are the assessments that we're using. If we see 2 or 3 times on their assessments, their squat's not moving and we're far enough out in training, we're going to use it. And the levels that you'll see benefit the most are going to be a level 2 type kid and a level 3. So level 3, think about like a college age kid who's like coming home for training in the summer and they just want something fun to really challenge them and push themselves. Now they have that dialed in aspect of training that's a very precise goal. Okay, so they're gonna build their whole week around that goal of pushing their squat. And that's also what makes it so cool for the kid who's a level 2. A level 2 kid wants to push their back squat and get these huge gains in their actual lifting numbers. But then all of a sudden the level 2 kid makes gains mentally, and it carries over to other lifts from the mentality aspect, from the mentality perspective. Now, the athletes specifically, I think this sounds crazy. Baseball players benefit from this a lot. Wrestlers benefit from this a lot. Football kids right after the season's over. Shot putters right after the season's over. The athletes that don't really need to do this would be someone like, tennis players, swimmers as much. I don't think it's as necessary. The ones that I think benefit from it a lot that almost seems counterintuitive would be jumpers, would be triple jumpers, long jumpers. Now, I think you do it soon after the season ends, and maybe you do it to a box or you do it to pins. So it's a little bit, because they tend to be a little bit taller in nature relatively, but it's just a fun thing for them to build and ignite their postseason training off of. They say you spend 2 to 4 weeks postseason. Hey, we're just going to get back in shape. Okay, 4 weeks is up. Now we're putting super squats in. Super squats, sets of 20 every Friday. When we get to 10, you take 2 breaths. When we get to 12, you take 3 breaths. When we get to 14, you take 4 breaths. And when we get to 16, you take 5 breaths. And you can build off of that. Now, that's not the exact system that Randall puts together, but the system that I think can benefit quite a bit is looking at the sports, looking at when the assessments, when they are stalling out, analyze them. Are they at a strong point mentally? I'm thinking about my son right now. He's going into 8th grade. He probably would benefit from the super squat system after football season this coming year. And so if we build out that yearly calendar and we're looking at that 50-week yearly calendar, we're going to put in super squat system at the end of football, and we're going to have him do this. This is the other thing. Have an individual do this with 3 to 5 other people. Because one, if you all go at the same time, you want to get the 20 reps done without quitting. Okay? Because you want to make sure if nobody else quits, you don't want to be the bitch. Okay? The other thing is, if everybody else quits and you don't, you feel tough. And guess what? That's okay. It's okay to feel tough. It's okay to feel strong. It's okay to feel like you accomplished something mentally. And the best part about this is that typically you do start light. So you start light and you build up, and it's the likelihood of you being injured is actually pretty damn low because the weight is much lower. Okay, so there's a bunch of different benefits, but I love using like methods like this to figure out what an athlete needs based off of the yearly calendar, based off of where they are in the career. And that's the thing with our periodization system is like our periodization is based off of the levels. It's based off of the athlete type. It's based off of the levels determine what type of exercises they're going to get. So we can factor in all these different pieces and then put this method specifically in there. And we know certain things are going to happen. Okay, so I wanted to share that personal story, working up that 405 for 19. I was a bitch and didn't do 20. Gained a lot of weight, saw a huge impact on my other lifts, and also saw a direct impact on my actual sport. And because we could back off of the squats and still reap that benefit from the volume that we were doing. Now, the other big factor here is that I think most people can benefit from this. I think there's some sports that don't necessarily need to be more hard-headed in the weight room. And those sports I don't necessarily think would benefit too much. If they have a personality type that you think would, for sure, go ahead and run it, but I don't think everybody needs to run it. I would typically run it right after the season ends within 2 to 4 weeks. I would set out the goal. I would weigh them consistently. I would also say try to achieve, if at least 1.3 grams per pound of body weight on the day that they're doing it. I would try to get them all to make sure that they're taking creatine so that every Friday also when we build into this, the cool part too there is that now you're telling the athletes like this is what the priority for this week is. It's very similar to we just ran the 38 days of benching every single day. It's very similar to these methods. These methods can be used interspersed throughout the year. I don't think they need to be something that you run all the time. and that you just go from 10 by 10 to 20 set to the super squats to the bench every or squat every day, whatever it is that you're going to do. But all of these things have their time and place. And I think that that's the big aspect, is when you know this athlete who's this type of individual and it's this time of year and this is their level, they're going to benefit from this. Then you run super squats for 10 weeks and they're going to learn how to push. They're going to learn how to deal with stress. They're going to learn how to have those outer body experiences. And that's what makes you so into lifting long term. When you're into lifting from that experience, now you want more of that. Now you see training bigger than what it is. Okay, you see training for the experience and the interpersonal and intrapersonal growth that you're going to have as an athlete. I hope this helps somebody out there. If you like this content, click on this card right here, because remember, freaks, if you want to become a champion, you've always got to cultivate your power. Peace.